So this afternoon, I am going to be introducing our next speaker, who is Paul Chivers. He heads up the PPE innovation and sustainability team in the NHS supply chain. He's got an engineering background and has had extensive program and project management experience, which is what sort of means that he's very qualified to do what he's going to be describing to you in this next session. Him and his team have been successfully identified a reusable Type 2R mask, which is being piloted to influence the National Infection Prevention Guidance to support reusable mask safety. And he's also liaising closely with regulators to discuss standards and specifications for reprocessing PPE and some medical devices. So I'd like you all to welcome to the stage today for the final session, Paul Chivers. Thank you.
Hi everyone, thank you very much. That sounds a lot more grand than it is when that team is only 2 people. Okay, so just to put it in context, people have had big budgets, big teams, lots of things they're looking after. It's me plus 2 others. As Becky says, so I head up the PPE reuse and innovation team. We recently moved, April, from the Department of Health and Social Care over to the supply chain, which is when my team was cut from 7 down to 2. So today we're going to look at a bit of the background about the team, why it was formed, when it was formed, what achievements we've achieved to date, some of the challenges and next steps. Some of those things may be things you may be able to help us with as well. So in terms of the background, so back at the peak of the pandemic in 2020, there was a deep dive commissioned by Emily Lawson. She was the Chief Operating Officer and also heading up the PPE cell. She was looking at that deep dive, found that the obstacles and blockages for why people don't get new PPE, there's no innovation and there aren't newcomers to the market. And that included things like the NHS supply chain. They let 2, 3 or 4 year contracts, which is no easy way then for any newcomers to get in. There's also nowhere to go for a point of contact. If you've got a product or a novel idea, if you want to manufacture something like that, if you don't know whether it's PPE or whether it's a medical device, you don't have anywhere really to go to get that advice and guidance. MHRA won't give you it, HSE won't give you it because they regulate you. And if they give you the guidance, then they're likely to be policing themselves if anything goes wrong. Similarly, the PPE strategy came out in October 2020, and that was from the politicians that said that there would be more onshore and nearshore production, there would be more resilience, and there would be more reusable products. And then linked to, as many people have talked about today, the NHS Net Zero 2020 and the Greener NHS formed again in 2020. The point I would make is that we're pretty much at the end of 2022. It soon will be Christmas. That's 2023 then, 5 years away from hitting that, the start of the 80% reduction. So there's a lot to do. As I say, the team was formed. It was 7 people plus me. Now it's a little team of 2. So what have we achieved in that time? The Glove MOOC. So MOOC is a massive open online course. It is a 1-hour education and information package. It is based heavily on what Great Ormond Street Hospital achieved in about 2018 when they managed to reduce glove usage by 33%. 33% of our current glove usage across health and social care, which is currently 7 billion a year, is quite a sizable difference. There's a lot of carbon, a lot of procurement costs and things like that. So we launched that MOOC back in August. It's live, it's available to everybody in health and social care. It's available to the independent sector. It's currently being used by people in Australia and Hungary as well. And over 1,000 people have currently signed up to it, and we are continuing to promote it. There's some small tweaks and updates being done to it, but it is available. Anybody wants the link, give me a shout and we will email the link out to you. And then the idea is to try and drive organisations to actually uptake the MOOC, use the learning from it. It's quite interactive. It's a little bit like the TikTok people that like. It's short clips, bit of narration over the top of it, and some videos and things as well. As you can see on there, if all users, that's just health and social care, did a 15% reduction, there'd be a £24 million saving and a 27,000 tonnes reduction in carbon. The next one that's on there is a glove dispenser. We're piloting a glove dispenser. There's one company in the world that makes a glove dispenser. You pull a glove out, cuff first from the bottom, put the glove on, pull the next one out. Guaranteed 1 glove comes out. 5 don't drop on the floor and you don't pick them up and put them in the bin. My suggestion is move the bin, they'll fall straight in it and you won't get back strain. But that is indicative of a 10% reduction in waste. Again, like I say, across all users, it's another £16 million. And this is year on year. And it's probably higher than that because if you think about it, Great Ormond Street achieved that 33% reduction before the pandemic. So there's probably a lot more glove wearing now. And as I say, so that's 27,000 for the glove MOOC and 18,000 tonnes for the dispenser. Other achievements, reusable. So the reusable Type 2R mask, as Becky says, that's currently on pilot in Acute Trust down in the Royal Devon and Exeter. And we're also looking at doing a community pilot. The reason to do a community pilot is because they don't readily have access to compliant laundries. So therefore, what we're looking at is we're going to a laundry to try and make it compliant, and that's not with thousands and thousands of pounds of capital investment. It's about their processes and making sure they've got a quality management system, so they've got all the infrastructure, they've got all the equipment, but we need to make sure that they can be compliant with HTM 0104 so that we can ensure that these masks are laundered safely. They're not allowed to be laundered at home because they're medical devices. We're also working with Bolle on reusable eye protection, and they are designing and making a product specifically for health and care. They came with us to a lot of meetings, and all the feedback they got from the IPC was, too many little grooves, too many little nooks and crannies, build up of debris, difficult to clean, we don't like that. So they just went, do you know what, we'll just make one. So it's a very smart one. We've seen 4 prototypes so far. They look like cycling glasses. I know they'll get stolen, but they're not as expensive as people like to think. And also, they last 2 years. Scratch resistant, fog resistant. The issue we're looking at now is how we do clean and decontaminate them safely. Because the standard which eye protection is built is EN166. There is no cleanliness standard in there at all. So at the moment, we know that people use wet wipes, some harsher than others, and some are damaging the seals if they've got the seals on for the aerosol generating procedures. So that's part of what we're doing, and I'm meeting with the Health and Safety Exec on Wednesday this week to discuss some test scenarios for the ozone cabinets we're looking at, the UVC cabinets we're looking at, and the hypochlorous acid and spray and cloth. The other one, P3 decontamination guidance, I won't take any credit for that. Felicity Holmes from up in Scotland, she did a load of testing with a lot of P3 masks. Those that don't know what a P3 mask is, one of those. Came from a building site. It's for heavy industry and construction, but they are quite widely used now because people don't like the FFP3s. You get a better chance of a fit test with them. There is no cleaning requirement in the standard for a P3 mask. You can wear that for 4 hours. You will sweat in it a lot. You'll condensation in it, and there'll be saliva in it. You can wipe it out with a wet wipe, go on holiday for 2 weeks, and hopefully when you come back and put it on, it might be clean. So that's part of the conversation with the Health and Safety Exec as well, is what is a good way to clean and decontaminate these products to make sure they're safe and clean for users to use. That then leads to that next point, which is a decontamination catalogue, which I've been after and talked about for a long time. We've got many different settings across the industry, health and care. One size will not fit all. Yes, that P3 decontamination guidance works on a washer disinfector. A lot of people don't have access to a washer disinfector. A lot of people, you don't want them to drive 40 miles to get to a washer disinfector. So it is about looking at giving alternatives, whether it's a spray, whether it's small little some of the ozone cabinets and the UVC cabinets are about that size. They work perfectly well for a dental setting in areas like that. You can just put your eye protection in. Whether it works for masks, that's part of the testing that we want to do. And then going on to the recycle, so we've done the reduce, we've done the reuse, and then obviously the part of the recycle. The people that are making these products will be taking them away at the end of their life. They will not be classed as waste. So if the mask has been washed 40 times, it will be going away for assessment and reprocessing. Sometimes they're made into blackout blinds, sometimes they're made into mattresses for homeless people, sometimes they're shredded and made into other materials. And Bolle will also, they work with a recycling partner and they will take the products away as well. So some of the potential benefits, we sort of procurement savings you would get from the glove reduction, potential benefits from reduce. I'm not doing procurement savings because there's some other things that need to be looked at in there as well. But in terms of reducing to 80%, and I never do 100% because there will always be use cases where people say it is safer and I need to use a single use, so that's fine. So 80% of the Type 2Rs that we currently use, you'd save 5,184 tonnes of plastic going into waste. And working on £300 a tonne, which is a figure we throw around. I see somebody, I think, put up £340 earlier. Exeter University are currently doing a study into the true cost of healthcare waste, and that is to take into account the resources, the rooms that it's used to store in, the bags, the transportation, all of those aspects, which may make that more significantly more than £300 a tonne. But it also reduces carbon by 11,500 tonnes. Even if that pre-COVID figure there is the 450 million type 2Rs that we use just in health pre-COVID. So even if it's that, it's still 3,500 reduction in carbon and 1,600 tonnes of waste. Aprons, the plastic aprons, which drive me insane. I don't really see much benefit to a plastic apron. It's a silly little bit of cheap plastic that flaps around, creates a lot of waste. There's a strong belief that if we can reduce glove usage, every time somebody picks up a glove, they pick up an apron. Every time somebody picks up an apron, they pick up a glove. So if you reduce one, you'll reduce the other. And then what we're trying to say is actually, if you do need to wear an apron, wear a reusable one. They're available, they can be laundered through the same process, and they can be used up to 75 times. So if we did that and we reduced the aprons by 80% as well and went over to reusables, that's nearly 10,000 tonnes of carbon and 3,264 tonnes of waste, and again, circa £1 million. And again, this is year on year. And these figures are on current sort of usage, not as high as they were at the peak of the pandemic. And then visors, I would normally bring out the silly visor, which we had 2,800 people who responded to a survey, and the feedback on visors was shocking. There was people that couldn't see through them properly. The needles looked bent. I suggest none of you want a sort of nurse coming at you looking at it through a bent needle. Similarly, maternity units, they reported that when they look down, the edges are quite sharp and they nearly sort of damage babies. So there's nothing really good about them. They're big, they're bulky, and if they're single use, in the 2 years that you'd be wearing reusable eye protection, it would cost you £500 on visors at £1.40 each. Those eye protection that we're having developed would be nowhere near that, not even 1/10 of the cost. So again, lots of benefits and lots of reduction in terms of carbon and waste. Other things that the massive team's working on is we want a P3 respirator. As I say, I showed you one. That is horrible, right? If you have just come around from an anaesthetic, if you're a mental health patient or if you're a young child and somebody comes at you wearing that, you will be petrified, all right? But we have had to adapt, borrow and adopt from, as I say, heavy industry. That was made for the military, and we're looking to see if somebody will donate £30,000, because not only do I have a small team, I have no budget. We want to buy some prototypes of those, put them into health and care settings, get feedback on them, and then hopefully go to production. They're much more lightweight. That whole panel across the front is a filter, not like those two silly big white things that stick out the sides. It also doesn't obscure their vision. Health and care workers are constantly looking down. A lot of the P3 products on the market, as I say, are big filters in the way, and they're also quite heavy. So we know that some clinicians can wear one for half a day, and then they get neck ache, and then they go back to the disposable. But the other thing as well on this is we need to look at how do we decontaminate it, what level of decontamination is required. And again, hopefully I might get some steer from the Health and Safety Exec on Wednesday. So again, if we replaced 80% of the FFP3s currently in use, there's a £5.5 million saving in terms of procurement. That's at 55p each if the FFP3. I looked online the other day and people are selling them at £2.50 each, so that might be heavily understated. And it is, as I say, currently quite a low level. 260 tonnes of plastic, generating a £78,000 saving in waste, and then 1,000 tonnes of carbon reduction. We also want to look at powered hoods. There are a lot of powered hoods out there, and people will wear powered hoods for all the right reasons. They may have religious beards. They may not be able to fit test to any of the products on the market, etc. However, there's no good way to clean a powered hood. I spoke to someone the other day, and he said, you can wipe the outside of it down 200 times. So I then said, well, how do you clean the inside? And he said, you don't. Not many people in this room, I'm suggesting, want to put that powered hood on after somebody's worn it 100 times and never cleaned the inside of it. So that's why we're looking at how do we safely decontaminate and clean these products going forward. At the moment, as I say, I'm looking at ozone, looking at hypochlorous acid, and looking at UVC. So what are the challenges? I won't put a single product into a pilot onto a health or care worker's face or head or body until it's been certified and confirmed independently that the claims made by the manufacturer are true. During the pandemic, we had people throw products at us and say, yep, here's the test certificates, etc. And then through some challenges, it had been photoshopped. It wasn't their test certificate. So I therefore go to somebody independent. Currently, I use Surgical Materials Testing Laboratory in South Wales. There is a cost, a capacity, and a capability. They may not be able to assess everything. They might have to outsource it, which is fine, but at least we get the validation that it is a compliant product. But going on to the next point, as I have no funding, if people want sustainability and innovation in the NHS, somebody needs to fund it appropriately. We then need to agree what this evidence required for the efficacy of innovative cleaning and decontamination. I get challenged that I need to prove that UVC will work, that ozone will work, that hypochlorous acid will work. My challenge back is nobody's ever challenged to see whether wet wipe works on silicone and soft rubbers. Everybody loves a Clinell wet wipe. You can not move more than that far away from one in a trust. Doesn't mean to say they clean everything, right? Just because they're readily available. Education and behavioural changes is also needed. If I say to somebody that I'd like you to put this mask on because I wore it yesterday and it's been through the laundry and I give it to you, there's about a third split in this room. A third of people go, yeah, it's okay, I don't mind. A third will go, how was it clean, what did you do? And the other third will go, over my dead body am I wearing a mask you had on your face a couple of days ago. So there's a part of that as about the education to explain to them that it's been through an approved process, and that's the same we'll have to do with the P3 masks, and we'll have to do the same with the eye protection. These did go on to a trial down in Cornwall, and a lot of the staff didn't want to wear them because they believed they were being washed with mop heads. And there's part of that is about the comms up front as well. They weren't being washed with mop heads, but the story had got out, and once it's out, it's very difficult to turn it around. So it's about that education and information. You know, the flip side is when you go to a restaurant, you put that fork in your mouth, you haven't got a clue if it even saw warm water or just saw the waiter's trouser leg. Just putting it out there. Depends which restaurant you go to, I guess. Support for specific health and care specifications and standards. Because there is no cleanliness standard in EN 166 and there is no cleanliness standard in EN 140 and 143, which is for the reusable mask and the filters, it makes it very difficult for manufacturers to know what challenge to put it against and therefore to recommend the products to clean it. An example of that is the visors when they came out. Somebody said it's reusable. How do you clean it? You run it under a tap for 5 minutes and air dry it, i.e. hang it on a clothesline. We don't have many hospitals with clotheslines in a corridor, and at the end of a shift, you will not get clinicians and healthcare workers join the queue for the sink to wash a visor. So it's about having appropriate processes that actually do return something that's safe. So that's why I'm also part of my conversation with the HSE is about whether we can have health and care specs. They don't take that long. We created the transparent face mask specification back in April last year. It took 2 months. You take existing specs, you put them together, you add some bits if you want them and things like that. The other thing is business as usual owners. The MOOC is live, the MOOC is up and running. We facilitate group sessions on it, so people, there's chat going on and everything like that. If people have got good case studies, we will upload them and make them more live. I have a team of 2, as I keep banging on about. One of them is quite busy running that MOOC. I've got some other things he'd like to do, but until I can find somebody in the business that wants to own that MOOC and drive it and use it going forward and encourage other organisations to use it, he's tied up doing that. Improved communication across all organisations. It was touched on again today earlier. There needs to be a central repository about what people are doing, what pilots, what trials, what products people might be trialling, because lots of people seem to go off and do similar things without knowing that somebody else might already have done that, made some mistakes or got some learnings from it. It's something that we talk about, but we don't know where to put that. The health service isn't great at having a central point and a central sort of communication channel. And improved networks as well to communities and communities to focus on some of these challenges. As I say, me constantly banging on the HSE's door about the fact we need these health and care standards. I might get there in the end, but maybe if it was a collective, we might do better quicker. And then, so what are the next steps? First step there is to find out who I hand all this over to on the 1st of April. We are a temporary team. We were stood up during the pandemic. I think I've been through this process 4 times. We've always got a stay of execution, and we've been extended and extended. The team shrunk and shrunk. But I don't know that after the 1st of April, the supply chain may say, well, that's it. Because they haven't created any roles, there's nothing for us to apply into. So come the 1st of April, we may well not be in existence. So we have to hand all this over, and we therefore have to know who we're going to hand this over to, assuming, of course, they want to take it on. We need to confirm the test scripts for the decontamination using ozone, UVC, and the hypochlorous acid. Again, that's the ongoing conversations that we're having so that it can be recognised what testing we need to do and what tests the suppliers need to do to demonstrate that the product is safe with the various equipments that we want to put through it. Pilot the reusable eye protection with ozone and UVC. We'll choose 2 sites. We pretty much know where they are. We'll put an ozone cabinet on one site. We'll put UVC on the other. We'll get the eye protection when it's the final prototypes, the gold prototypes will be ready by Christmas. And then February, March time, we should have the final ones that we can then start to put into a pilot, to pilot those to demonstrate they're safe and people like them, get the user feedback and all the other data that we get as well. We need to develop reusable transparent masks. We've already got 7 compliant transparent masks that we've worked across the 4 nations with as well and various manufacturers to help them get to be a compliant mask. That means it meets the transparent face mask specification that we've got on gov.uk and that it meets the essential health and safety requirements of the MHRA. But they are quite pricey compared to a single-use type 2R mask. So what we're looking at is if we can make them reusable, the cost per use comes down and therefore it makes it more attractive because at the moment there's still a lot of people in the DDEF community that are excluded because they're struggling to get hold of transparent face masks. There are the 7 masks that are compliant at the moment. They are in pilots in Scotland, Northern Ireland, Wales and in England. We're going to pull all that information together and look at what the outcome from those reviews are to see if actually do we need to engage with manufacturers to say actually the feedback is pretty poor, or actually we have got a good variety for the various settings in which they're being used. The agreed suite of approved and accepted decontamination cleaning processes, as I say, we've touched on that a couple of times. Continue with the innovation hubs and roadshows. So every month I host an innovation hub on the last Tuesday of the month for an hour and a half. That's where we let other organisations come and they update on what trials, what pilots they might be doing, what innovative developments they've got. We've had a couple doing hypochlorous gassing of rooms as opposed to hydrogen peroxide to decontaminate them. We've had sustainable procurement on. We've had Prof Mood come on about the gloves and things like that. So that continues each month. And then the road shows. It was something that was touched on earlier. We've got 13 suppliers of PPE above the head and some cleaning agents. And we have been to Alderhay and we've been to Birmingham. We're in Chichester in a couple of weeks' time. We're also then in Manchester on the 3rd of November. We'll be in UCL at the end of November. And then we're going to do North Tees, one in Shropshire and hopefully one in Bristol. And that's to get feedback. So these 13 suppliers, they pay for overnight accommodation. They put 2 suppliers in the room. They're allowed to sell nothing. They are just there to listen to the users telling them what's wrong with our PPE now, so that we can then go and make better PPE for the next generation. Because currently, as you've seen from those 2 products there, that's builders' stuff. Most of these products are made for what's called a Sheffield head. This is a Sheffield head. It's a 5'11" white male, right? Most of our population in the NHS, we have one of the most diverse populations of any employer in the world. Therefore, those things don't fit them. Some of the feedback I've had is the P3 slipped off my face. That's part of the education as well, but it's also the fact that a lot of these products are not made for small Filipino nurses, people with very narrow faces, and all the rest of it. So they're having to make do. The other line that I hope most of you probably haven't heard me speak before. We take 3 to 5 years to train a health and care worker, and then we dress them head to toe in a £5. That's what it costs for a mask, eye protection, silly plastic apron, and a pair of gloves. I was in the forces 22 years. If you sent me to a war dressed in a £5, I probably wouldn't go. So the idea is that we actually get products that keep them safe, reusable and sustainable, and are designed for them and the environments in which they're in. So that's what the roadshows are all about. Standards and specifications for health and care settings we've talked about. And then to build on those networks with MHRA, HSE, TRA, and all the rest of the ones there that you can all read. We do get on very well with them. They are an easy point of contact. I can drop them a line and I get answers quite quickly, which is good. So in my opinion, based on the question for today, decontamination is very sustainable. When I saw the question, I was going to say, well, is to not decontaminate sustainable? As you've seen there with the tons and tons of single-use plastics that we are generating, it makes no sense to not have reusable products. Collectively, the interventions we've talked about there could reduce CO2 by 47,000 to 96,000 tonnes per year. I'm Paul Chivers, and thank you very much. Any questions?